Hello, you degenerates. Quick disclaimer. I'm gonna go off on a tangent real quick and talk about a whole lot of watch collecting bullshit. So if you want to skip past all of that, just use the chapters in the timeline to get to the main topic of the video. I've committed a watch collector's cardinal sin, and it's time to come clean. I got a Rolex. And if you really want to get angry, yes, I got it mainly because of the name and heritage. Although, in my defense, I also legitimately like the watch. It's hard to fully explain all the ins and outs of why I wanted one, and the simplest explanation is that I'm a basic bitch and proud of it. As a wannabe watch reviewer, I personally felt that there was value in owning one. Whether you like it or not, Rolex, to me, is the community's gold standard for quality. It doesn't matter if that's not true, and it doesn't matter if I don't actually believe that. Because until the community as a whole stops using Rolex as a reference point to show how much better other watches are, even the biggest Rolex haters will have to subconsciously acknowledge the brand's impact on them. Does this mean that I genuinely think Rolex is superior? No, absolutely not. However, despite how subjective watch collecting can be, one of my biggest pet peeves is uneducated opinions. I understand that anyone can have their own opinion, and that's fine. But in order to have a functioning society, opinions really need to come from actual experiences, or else we end up with things like groupthink and Nazis. So in order for me to have a valid opinion on Rolex, or to have a valid opinion on why other watches are better or worse than Rolex, I felt that it was necessary for me to actually own and experience a Rolex. It's probably stupid to think this much over something so superficial. I'm fine with that. Rolex is undeniably a divisive topic, and I personally find it important to explain my thought process. This is not going to be a Rolex bashing video. These are just my thoughts as someone who buys watches to enjoy them, just like you. The thoughts presented here are coming from a regular guy with no agenda or hand in the watch business, and is just as curious about the mystery of Rolex ownership as anyone else. Hopefully, I can provide a different perspective. A point of view with no agenda other than to vocalize my own discoveries I made for myself. So what's the verdict? What are my thoughts on my Rolex Explorer? For me personally, the first impressions were underwhelming. You have to understand that I have the unique perspective of someone who is addicted to watches and has experienced many different types prior to my first Rolex. I think if you were someone who went from, let's say, only having worn Vostocks and then jumped straight to a Rolex, your first impressions would be quite different from mine. But I slowly made my way up from budget Seikos, Citizens, higher-end Seikos, Longines, Tudor, Omega. Hell, I even have a Patek Philippe in my collection. And my combined experience from all of those watches allows me to form the opinion that Rolex makes a watch pretty much as good as any of the other watches I own, just at a higher price tag. To be clear, I'm not saying a $100 homage is just as good. I am not here to validate that belief. I'm saying within a certain price tier of luxury watches, Rolex is right around what you've already experienced. And before I get tar and feathered on Reddit, keep in mind I'm saying these were my first impressions. My first impressions were underwhelming because I had placed Rolex on such a high pedestal that I was expecting angels to sing, the clouds to part, and God himself to come down and congratulate me. Now that I've had time to really break it in and get some serious wrist time with it, I can say that my thoughts on the Explorer went from initially being underwhelming to an overall great experience. It does all of the little unnoticeable things really well. And then once you get used to it, you start to realize just how noticeable those things are when you try on a different watch. For example, the crown action. It's light and buttery smooth. There's not much resistance, and yet it still feels solid. This is something that would otherwise seem like a non-event until you feel the crown action on a different watch. With other watches, you will find that the crown action is either solid and very stiff, or light and very flimsy. The Explorer takes the best qualities of both, and it's a really pleasant experience. Ergonomics is another one. From the case design to the soft texture of the steel, it's just a comfortable watch to wear. I usually wear my watches loose to compensate for any discomfort from the case, but with the Rolex, I can pretty much wear it right at the size of my wrist. And lastly, timekeeping. For the most part, your average person realistically only needs a watch to be accurate enough. Even if it's off by 45 seconds, that's still going to get you where you need to be on time. But when you get used to that cost-rated accuracy, you realize just how cool it is for your watch to stay in pace with your cell phone. These attributes make up the very basics of watchmaking, and the Explorer gets all of those things right. These aren't required things, they're just nice to have. And if you're a watch nerd, then those nice to have unnecessary things can have value. I don't want to go too deep into the design because it's a topic that's been covered to death. I will say that it does look very good, and if this is a watch that you're working towards getting, you won't be disappointed. One thing that may or may not disappoint you is the dimensions. It's advertised as a 40mm watch, and it very well may be 40mm between random points somewhere on the watch that no normal person would ever think to measure between. However, for your average monkey like myself, I measure between the points from 3 to 9, and that comes out to right around 38.5mm. It very much wears like a 38mm watch, and personally I was pleased with that. If you were expecting a larger 40mm watch, you will not get that here. Here's a side-by-side with the 39mm Tudor Ranger. Both share a similar wearing experience, but I'd have to admit that comfort does go to the Explorer by the simple fact of the more rounded edges along the entirety of the case and bracelet. Speaking of the Tudor Ranger, how do these watches compare to each other? I know that's the question that gets everyone going. Tudor fanboys always want to hear about their precious underdog coming out on top of their evil big brother. Trust me, I'm a Tudor fanboy. I know exactly what I'm talking about. My hot take on the matter is this. I like the Ranger more than I like the Explorer. No, I don't think it's better. I just like it more. And that's simply because I care too much about the Explorer. I can sit here and pretend to think that the Explorer is 100% a tool watch designed to be used and abused, but my reality is not the case. Don't get me wrong, I'll use it and I certainly won't keep it in a safe, but I still have a mental block that keeps me a little on edge whenever I have it on. I'm generally pretty good about wrist awareness when I'm wearing a watch. I'm the kind of guy that enjoys not smashing my watches against things like door frames and doorknobs. But when I'm wearing the Explorer, I become hyper aware, which I find sort of reduces the overall wrist wearing experience. And yes, I understand that the easy thing to say is, just wear your watch, it's a tool. I'm completely aware of that. But the facts are that when it's on my wrist, I hesitate to be as cavalier with it as I am with my Ranger. The Ranger is the perfect blend of luxury and tool. It's not cheap, but not so expensive that you feel compelled to baby it, and it's finished in such a way that you're not worried about marking it up. No special polishes here, only brushed finishing, making it a great choice to get into shit, both literal and figurative. All I can say is the Ranger resonates more with the lifestyle that I have, and I appreciate that. With all of that said, the Explorer and Ranger both have their place in my collection. Some watches need to be owned in pairs, and that's how I feel about these two. I find that they complement each other, working in sync with each other's aesthetic appeal and overall purpose. And holy shit, that's a lot of pointless rambling over a stupid watch, right? I don't know. I think it's important to be somewhat passionate over things, even if it's just material goods. Considering how personal watch collecting can be for a majority of us, having discussions like this can be useful. Overall, I do thoroughly enjoy owning this watch. I enjoy the quality, the branding, the exclusivity, all of it. But the hype is just that, hype. Objectively, the Explorer doesn't offer anything light years past any other big-name luxury watch. What it does offer, to me, is closure. As dumb as this sounds, I am free from the mystery of Rolex and can enjoy my other watches in peace. I don't have to wonder if I settled for the Ranger, and I can continue to be an ignorant Seiko fanboy, but this time it'll be willingly and not blissfully. I can't speak for you or anyone else, but this was a necessary addition to my collection, and at least the result is I get to own an incredibly well-made watch. What do you guys think? I'm a fucking moron, right? Probably. But that's all I have for now. Stay classy. I sure as hell won't.